Hey y'all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick look and hands-on comparison between the Baseus Bowie MA10 as well as the Bowie MA10s. So as that name implies there, this is the slightly more upgraded or more pro version of these TWS wireless buds from a company that is pretty well known for making power banks as well as value-oriented gadgets and tech, and this is really no exception. The difference between the two is only $10 apart, and for the $10 more, the 10S here has the capability of spatial audio, so if you are trying to listen to, say, concert recordings, you want a little bit more of a dynamic experience, the sound quality might see a slight improvement here. In addition, it has Qi wireless charging support, so you can pop it onto a wireless charging mat to top it up, whereas the regular MA10s need to be charged using a Type-C cable. That being said, not everything is necessarily an upgrade on the 10S. The regular MA10s actually have slightly longer battery endurance with the case, again around 140 hours, compared to on these, with the case they last for closer to 40 hours. That's still going to be above average, longer than, say, the AirPods, but again, if you really want the strongest endurance, then the MA10s may actually be beneficial. Although when it comes to continuous listening time, without popping them back out into the case, they will both last around 8 hours before you need to kind of top them up again. So those are some of the spec and top line differences. The packaging, interestingly enough, also seems to be a little smaller on the more Pro edition, and the noise cancellation performance should be identical on both. They also should be packing very similar drivers when it comes to the actual sound quality, and both have the same low latency mode and support for their companion app. Now, inside of the packaging for both of these, you'll find a quick start guide, and like most other Baseus products, you also get kind of a fun sticker pack, a nice little extra that is just showing a bit more attention to detail. And down below here, you have just a warranty card, and then of course the buds themselves. So immediately we can tell that the regular MA10s are going to be a touch larger to support the larger endurance for the battery case, although both will come with a USB Type-C charging cable as well as some spare sets of silicone tips. Starting with the regular MA10s, they are constructed out of polycarbonate plastic but have some interesting textures going on, including the base to make it a little bit more easy to pop onto a table without sliding around. They have a substantial heft to them though because of the larger capacity of the battery case, and the Type-C port is also accented orange, showing some pretty good attention to detail. When you pop them open, they automatically initialize and begin to pair with your device, and there are touch sensors on the top that you can use to control volume, play, pause. It can be used in both a stereo as well as a mono mode, and the Bowies here do have a kind of interesting ergonomic shape to them. They have a little bit more of a winged design to prevent them from falling out when it's being worn. The mesh covering up the drivers inside, though, are constructed out of metal, as you can tell, which is, I think, a little bit better than fabric, making it slightly easier to clean. Now, taking a quick look here at the other M10S, it has a bit more of a slick exterior, starting with more of a piano-like finish up top. That looks good, but does attract a bit more fingerprints. The casing is otherwise constructed out of polycarbonate plastic, along with the same orange accented Type-C charging port, although this time around there are no textures at the base, but this one again does support Qi wireless charging. The hinge, though, on both of these models are made out of plastic as opposed to, say, metal or aluminum. Otherwise, when you pop them open, they will again automatically turn on and start to initialize, pairing with your device pretty quickly, once again held into place pretty securely using magnets. One other benefit of the 10S, though, is there is a LCD display inside that will tell you the specific percentage left in the battery case. Compared to on the base model, there are 4 LEDs, each one representing 25%. That gives you a rough idea. So just a little bit more detail there if you're looking for it. And a closer look at the buds themselves, they otherwise are quite similar. That being said, there's a little bit more of an interesting shimmery texture going on to the top of the M10S. As you can tell there, they're more of this light blue, and there's a ring which almost looks metallic, although the center glowing LED is still going to be quite similar. The size is otherwise nearly identical as well as weight, and you still have a bit of that ergonomic wing up top, though the back transitions into a slick plastic, and then the mesh here is still constructed out of metal. So the drivers actually haven't been changed. Components are still the same, including support for standard audio codecs here, including SBC and AAC on both of these buds. That being said, again, just a slightly different texture or treatment on the front surface, which I think makes it look a little bit more shimmery and eye-catching per se. I'll also say that although the longer battery endurance of the regular MA10s are great if you're going in a really long road trip. That being said, these are substantially slimmer and easier to slide into pockets and more lightweight as a result. So if you're looking for portability, that can be one advantage. Both of these buds are also going to be rated for IP water and sweat resistance for working out, and they should still survive. And Baseus also claims that they've partnered with certain composers and even Oscar winners to tune some of the EQ profiles for these buds. So they should supposedly sound a little bit better. And a quick look at the Baseus companion app, starting with the MA10s. Once you pair it with Bluetooth and location services turned on, you can check the battery percentage remaining, as well as go into the ambient mode versus the active noise cancellation mode. Ambient is transparency mode that lets you amplify the sound around you if you're having a conversation or you want to be aware of what's going on without necessarily removing the buds. Now you can also choose a couple of different ANC profiles. For example, if you're indoors versus commuting versus outdoors, it's not really intelligent enough to automatically switch between those profiles for you, such as cranking it higher, say if you're in a noisier zone, like on some other buds we've seen in the past, but you do have a couple that you can play with and set your own custom depth if you want the highest intensity yourself versus something a little bit more subtle. So you can play with those effects, and under gesture setting, that's just changing what the taps will correspond to on the left and right sides. So double pressing as well as 3 times can trigger different commands, including the low latency mode, as well as volume up higher and lower, so on and so forth. So pretty easy to customize. And last but not least, there is a low latency mode that will make the audio and video sync together if you're trying to watch back higher frame rate clips or, of course, doing a bit of gaming. It does make a subtle difference, although if you want the best audio quality and performance, typically you want the most data to be transmitted over. And so if you're listening to just music, normally I would recommend turning this mode off. That being said, one omission on both pairs of buds here is there is no aptX, nor is there any true hi-fi audio codecs such as LDAC being supported in the Bluetooth chips. Now you can also tap on the icon here to ring an alarm and find the left and right sides if they've fallen underneath a sofa, for example, but you have to be still connected via Bluetooth. When it comes to the sound quality, they are again identical between the MA10s and the 10Ss, and for the most part they are very good. Despite being again single driver pairs, I found that they were pretty comfortable for pop music as well as EDM and rock tracks that I was listening to. They had enough kick when it comes to bass for it to feel impactful whenever a drum beat kicked in, without crushing the mids and trebles. So overall had a good amount of detail, textures, and vocals, as well as instrumentals, all sounded quite pleasant. And they were very comfortable too in terms of ergonomics, thanks to the extra supported silicone wing on the outside. I felt that when wearing them for a couple of hours, they didn't really feel too stressful. And last but not least, you do also have a EQ mode that you can play around with, which we've also seen on some of the past offerings from Baseus. So you can swap it into more of a theater mode, bass boosted mode, hi-fi, DJ, jazz, as well as classical, that you can boost different frequency ranges yourself, or go into a custom mode to create your own equalizer and adjust the frequency spectrums yourself. So even though there isn't really an automatic way of doing a hearing test for you, you can still play around with these, and they can make a slight difference on the sound profile that you're listening to. And now moving into the MA10s, again, sound quality for the most part is pretty much par on par the same, although with the companion app, we have the aforementioned acoustics mode that you can trigger on here. There's one for music and also one for gaming and movies. That being said, the effect of the spatial audio on these are more similar to an EQ profile in my experience, as opposed to having real head tracking, interestingly enough. So I suspect they don't actually have accelerometers. It does feel like you're more immersed in a live environment. The audio volume level increases a little bit, and you can hear a bit more of separation of different instrumentals and vocals. That being said, if you're turning your head around, it doesn't make the left or right side louder or more quiet like on some other spatial audio equipped headsets we've seen in the past. So I would say this is more of kind of a marketing upplay in this instance, but you can play around with it and just think of it as more of an EQ profile. Everything else though is exactly the same, including ANC. You have the same ability to change the intensity manually, as well as trigger the low latency mode and go into other EQ effects as well that we've all seen there from before. And in both instances, the ANC effectiveness was also the same. It suppresses around 90% of environmental noises, especially lower frequency sounds like engines, as well as fans, car noises, things like that. Although higher frequency sounds like voices can still occasionally creep in. And the transparency mode was also pretty well tuned, didn't feel too loud, but you could still hear what's going on when you activate it. So that is more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of these newest pairs of wireless buds from Baseus under their Bowie line, again the MA10 as well as the MA10s, and out of the two, I expected coming in to just think the MA10s is worth the extra $10 since you are getting, again, some more software enhancements as well as the support for Qi wireless charging. But in the end, I actually think it's a very close call, especially since these models have identical sound quality as well as audio codec support, not to mention that the spatial effect in this instance is more of a simulated software experience, and finally the battery life on these are actually longer. So I think if you're after just more of a road endurance pair of buds, these actually might be a slightly better value in this instance. But if you want something slimmer as well as slightly more stylish, in addition to having Qi wireless charging support, the 10s here might be worth considering. You can learn more details if interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. Those are the Baseus Bowie series